Hello, this is Clarence Moye with Awards Daily here with Emmy-nominee Jake Lacy, who's a Peacock limited series, a friend of the family, puts him back in the conversation this year. Jake, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Hey, same. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start with sort of leaving the White Lotus. I'm a huge, huge White Lotus fan, particularly of your season. I've seen it. I'm embarrassed to say I've seen the whole thing 3 times.
Ah,
Um,
nice.
Working on that, I know you were working on it during the pandemic, but working on that, did you, and working with Mike White, did you take anything away from that experience that you would use to future projects like A Friend of the Family, right? Was there things that changed the way you approached the character or anything like that?
I think certainly with White Lotus, certainly with Friend of the Family, it's like coming to understand that the the truth, the reality for that character is always my only job. That the framing of it is the writer and director's job, and like knowing the style that we're in is important, but the pieces I liked best, both in being a creative part of it, and then also seeing the finished product, is stuff that's not self-aware and that's sort of grounded in some weird truth for that character, as opposed to me on set trying to like construct something and thinking like, how do I fit into this puzzle here, and thinking like, no, you should just be as honest as you can all the time, and then someone else will figure out precisely how those pieces go together.
Mhm.
Because there's a really hacky there's some edit out there of like all my bad choices from the White Lotus, like when I saw that product I thought like, oh, this is the best. Like he's taken all the takes that I am so happy he directed me toward and stitch them together.
Right.
Like there's some performance out there where put together you go like, I don't think this guy's very good. And so, the ones he chose are just the ones that are the most grounded and the most honest to who Shane is. And the same for Friend of the Family. It's like, just do everything I can to live in the truth of that character. And then however the lens and production wants the audience to see that and think of it is not my responsibility.
It's a huge trust exercise then, between you and the director.
Yeah, to go, I'm just gonna do my lane, which is seemingly selfish in a way. I think like, oh, I should be considerate toward how all of this is working together, and maybe there's an element of that, but ultimately, like, the I don't need to do someone else's job. Like I should just do entirely my job, and then let those chips fall where they may. And you're right, it is a huge with Mike. That's really easy because he's brilliant. Like from day one, even just the reading of those scripts was like, oh, this is special. And then to step on set and go like, oh, and this is just the baseline. Like you have a vision for where this goes, not just taking what's on the page and then making it physical, but that's truly just the foundation for where you want this to exist. Um, it's easy to go like, I'll do whatever you want. I
Right.
you tell me and I'll do it, man.
So prior to the White Lotus, I have come to know Jake Lacy performances as somebody that you'd want to bring home to mom, that are super nice guys, right? And then there was the White Lotus, and you were like, okay, you're a little bit of an a-hole, but I can see there are some redeeming qualities there.
Right.
And then of course, friend of the family. Do these Are these opportunities coming to you organically, or are you choosing, more challenging or more different material than you've handled in the past?
Well, the White Lotus was an audition. Like this was deep in the pandemic, and they sent two scenes, and I put them on tape in my apartment in Brooklyn, and then sent them off, and so that came about as organically as anything in this business does for me. And then with Friend of the Family, I think Nick had seen White Lotus and knew some of my work from before, and so knew or felt comfortable that I could carry off like the neighbor next door, the good dad, the scout leader, the caring father, things like that. And then I went in and, they were interested in talking to me about the role, but they were sort of like, are you okay reading for it? Because we don't know if you have this other gear. And I was like, yeah, of course. It's like, no problem. So went in and worked with Nick and Eliza and just met each other and read and talked about the role. And I think in terms of picking and choosing, it's like the choosing is maybe in saying no to things that are very similar to what I've done in the past,
Mm.
um, which is kind of the only choice I think most actors, even the luckiest ones, have is to be able to say no, thank you to something because you don't really get to choose what you're doing unless you're like also producing and manifesting some work and go like, I wrote this script, I'm gonna get it made. Okay. Um, so really, it's trying to say like, unless there's a big reason to go back to the well of stable, good boyfriend material, whether that's it's being told in some other way, or it's an incredible director, or a co-star, or the script is wonderful, or a paycheck, like whatever
Yeah.
it is, it's like I probably want to find other things, and I've been so lucky to have those things come my way. It's yeah. I hate to be like, oh, I'll take credit for that. Like this was
Right.
by design. It's like it's what I'd hoped for, and then I've been incredibly lucky for those things to come my way. To get those opportunities.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. So let's dive into a friend of the family. Your character Bob was based on a true story, of course. And previously you talked about finding the truth of that character. That's your role as an actor, making sure that you're giving as true of a performance. How did you find the truth of such a challenging person, quote unquote, challenging person?
Yeah, you know, um, the initial my initial way of coming to it was some amount of research in regard to pedophilia and manipulation and coercion and um, that sort of the clinical understanding of those elements, and then an understanding of Robert Birchtold as best I could, his life and his childhood, and his marrying Gail and uh, his military service, these different elements. And then the final piece was reading like Lolita because it
Mhm.
was, he called his nickname for Jan was Dolly, which I think is taken directly from Lolita, and it was the closest thing that I could find to being inside judgment free of this pedophile's view of a child, um, and that it is both lustful but also is, in that novel he's convincing himself that this is love,
Right.
um, that there's an understanding between them that no other person could understand or have or facilitate. And so latching on to those um, concepts and ideas, and then for myself trying to find ways to replace that sort of internally to create the same like charge or yearning or need without trying to find a way to get my brain to like go to a place of pedophilic thoughts, because I have zero interest in trying to do that, and also is antithetical to, as soon as I start to think that way, I'm nauseous and my brain throws up walls as it should. And but that's not true for Birchtold, so finding a way to make the planning of this kidnapping like a heist, um, or to think of, you know love that I've had that was unrequited or fleeting, or um, you know, a brief encounter, any of these things to try to build an emotional life that's sort of parallel to his without attempting to override like my own humanity as a person to go like, how do I think like a pedophile? Um, and maybe the last piece is creating like very public private distinction between moments where he's free to be fully himself and 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 that sliding scale, between him as a churchgoer, where it's entirely a facade, and then times where it's somewhere in the middle. Gail is a manipulated, coerced, abused individual, I'd say, where he's partially entirely himself and partially not. And then these times with Jan where he's entirely himself. Um, yeah, I hope that terribly long answer covers some bases.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about Jan, that's the character that McKenna Grace plays, and she also in real life, Jan is serving as a producer of
Yeah.
this limited series. Tell me about that interaction. Did that impact your performance at all, having her there, having her in close proximity to you, or were you able to sort of compartmentalize that interaction?
Jan, real life Jan Broberg was available to us as a resource, and no one would know this story better, obviously. I was hesitant, to reach out, because I was scared. I thought, I don't know that having a friendship or a relationship with her is going to help me. Like, I'm worried that it's going to create this barrier between what I'm attempting to sort of recreate, as Birch told, and then my care and compassion and fondness for her. And the opposite was true. Like, I was dead wrong. She was on set, and we spoke and met, and her um light and intention behind this piece to be, bringing awareness that this is still something that happens today. It's not like we got to 2000 and child abuse just sort of vanished. It's like, this is sexual child abuse is still rampant in the US at the hands of someone known and trusted by the abused. The fact that her intention is to bring light to that, and then her championing of us as actors in telling her story was so enthusiastic that all those fears of kind of like where the boundaries would be, and whether she was going to be okay, it just dissipated, and it gave me, I think, much more of a purpose to really like fully give over, maybe more than I had been previously, or thought that I had really given over, and then to go like, oh no, you can fully, the one person here who could be re-traumatized by this is saying like, I'm in a healthy place, like
Yeah.
go for it, really,
Yep.
really go for it, was so generous on her part. um and she wrote me a note. She wrote each of the cast a small letter before we started, and mine, the first half, she was saying, B is a he was warm and charming, and incredible storyteller, and uh, generous, and that was his superpower, was to make you feel so unique and seen, um, and special in his orbit. Uh, and, in the back half of the letter was saying like, I'm okay. Like, you can do this. You're great for this. And I am here on the sidelines championing this production. So that also was like the first step toward going like, okay, you can put that to the side, and know she's all right, and we can just like really commit to this story.
That's a really selfless and amazing thing that she did, sending those letters and bringing you into it. Acknowledging the fact that yes, I am here, and it's okay, and let's get this out of the way, and set about making this project. That's really
Yeah,
great.
like a level of grace that I will probably never know, to be so generous as to say like, I've lived through this trauma and I'm here telling you you're going to be great is like remarkable. Also,
Yeah.
she's an actor, like
Mm.
I think Nick has said like that fact, I think, was tantamount to any success that the show has had creatively, and that she understands narrative process and creative process and collaboration and um, when to chime in and when to give people space, and I think that also, like, from one actor to another, she knew like, boy, if I was doing this, it would probably help to have the person it happened to saying like, go in good faith and do this, like, I'm here, I'm here for you, I'm present, we're good, um so that I feel like is sort of important to acknowledge as well.
You talked about sort of getting that green light to sort of go for it, as you said, and to fully take on this role and not hold anything back. Did you ever find during the process that you had to set some sort of boundary for yourself, that you found yourself pulling yourself back a little bit, considering this dramatic subject matter, or did you really truly just put all that aside? This is a character I'm playing, and at the end of the day, I'm able to put this in a box and lock it away.
Sort of two, like, like that, it just reminds me of like two very distinct examples maybe. One is early on in the filming, we shot a lot of the scenes where I'm dropping the kids off at school in the same handful of days. So my first days on set were like me and five or six kids in a vintage car, driving loops in Atlanta around this school. And the youngest kids didn't know anything about the story, just knew like they're in a car. And the older kids, production had left it to the parents to say, like, we leave it to you. We're not going to say anything in regard to this. That's your choice as to how much you want to share, And so they had, I think, shared small bits with the kids. And in between takes, it's like we're goofing around and the kids are messing with me and it's fun. And I'm trying to be like, hey, I'm here for you guys. If you're too hot and you need water or whatever, like, let me know. I'm the one adult in this car. Like, I can help out, But some of the older kids kept going like, you're a bad guy. You take her. You drug her and take her. You are bad. And I was like, all right, all right, all right. Let's, okay, okay. And like after the third or fourth time, I had to go to Nick and be like, hey, can you ask them to stop saying you're a bad guy in between? Like, you take her. Can we stop that? Can we just, partially for me, partially for the 6-year-old that's in the back seat? Like, can we just tamp that down? And he was like, oh my God. Like, they immediately took care of it. But I was like, we should nip this in the bud right now. Cause like, just for me to try to do these backflips to find a way that I'm like planting seeds in a child's mind about her own independence and breaking away from her family, and we have a trampoline and you should spend the night, and all these things under the guise of like, I'm a great dad. And then to have these have a 9-year-old be like, you're a bad dude. I was like, okay, okay, okay. And I think that, in a more uh gut level, like, sort of personal experience, there's one there's this, we don't show the abuse, right? So there's no scenes where we're negotiating kind of creatively, like, where are your hands going and how are we doing this? And, do we have a double that's 18 for these shots? And we don't, it's like we didn't go into any of that, partially because Nick was like, I don't have any interest in creating that and putting it into the world and asking a cast and crew to do that. And I also don't feel it's necessary narratively. The whole point is that the Brobergs don't know what's going on. They have
Right.
this horrific feeling of like something is wrong here, but they can't prove it. They don't know what it is. And so he was like, we want to give the audience the same feeling of like, what exactly is going on there? Like, what is this abuse? Um, So thankfully we didn't have those scenes to negotiate, but there's a scene where uh, Hendrix Yancey as Jan is tied down in the motorhome, and the filming of that was really disconcerting. Not because it was unsafe on set or there, it's just it's like that material is terrifying, Um, and then there's also a scene or just a shot that's the camera is uh, Alvaro, camera operator, is laying on his back with the camera up, and it's a shot of the skylight, and you just see my torso as sort of a shadow, like come across the edge of the frame and then back out. And we did that maybe 8 or 10 times, some like me unbuttoning my shirt as I lean in, some just me, some my shirt's open. It's like a number of things that are sort of degrees of, is this active? Is the abuse active in this moment? Is it finished? Is it just beginning? And even that, I feel like everybody involved in that moment in the motorhome filming that thing, like after about 15 minutes of that was like, let's take a little break. Like this is just dark to know exactly what it is that we are uh, portraying in this moment. I think everybody sort of stepped away for about 5 or 10 minutes and like sort of washed your hands of that moment and moved on to the next scene. But I didn't feel myself pulling back as much as like giving over to this, and then a handful of scenes where you thought like, I just need to take a moment to myself to like reset and connect with my own health and humanity, and then we will go back into telling the story.
Well, it's a tremendous performance, and I'm really happy and excited for you to see you take on, different things, more challenging roles, because I think, you're rising to that challenge. So congratulations for that. Last question
Thank
for
you.
you. I have to go back to the White Lotus just one
Sure.
time,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
um, because I just so dearly love the show. Do you think that we'll ever see Shane and Rachel return to another White Lotus property in the future?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike had texted Alex and I think while he was filming this latest season, and he's like, I had this idea for a standalone, like half-hour episode that's sort of like Linklater style. And he was like, it's just you guys and one other wealthy couple on a yacht in like the Caribbean. And he's like, it's just you talking. And we assume it's going somewhere, that there'll be some reveal of like, that's his ex-girlfriend, or this is the guy he screwed over on some real estate deal, or but instead it's just the banality of like two really wealthy couples just sort of blase in the sun on a boat. And then like the
Wow.
credits roll. I was like, that it's like his brain works in those ways that I'm like,
Mhm.
I always am jumping the shark. I'm always like, and then where he's like, no, the joke is so much flatter than that. Like, so yes, I pray that Shane and Rachel and Kitty uh pop back in. I had pitched, I was like, I don't think I ever told him this, but I was like, I really wanted like Shane and Kitty to be like in the back of a panning shot. Like
Mm.
it's not, we're not even in like the regular cast. You just see us like at the resort being like, God, those guys are still out here. Like Shane didn't go to jail. He still travels with his mom. Like, oh my God, just to see them like chewing out a concierge or, I don't know, lost with like a personal tour guide just in the background of some shot.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I hope so. I hope
That
so
would
is
be
the answer.
fantastic. When I talked to Alex for the show, I wanted to know so much what happens after that hug in the airport, because there's this look over her shoulder and you can interpret that in like 15 different ways. And and we just don't know. And that's what the beauty of it is that, it takes it away. Do you have an idea in your head of where you think they are 10 years following that episode or that season?
I mean, I don't know. I truly don't know about like the two of them together.
Mhm.
I know, uh, Mike and I talked about, Mike was sort of like, he's like, the people I have known who have a lot of money, there's sometimes like a discomfort that comes with it, like a
Mhm.
paranoia in being like, are you treating me a certain way because I'm a dick? Or because you assume I'm a dick because I have a lot of money? Or did I do something? Or like, or do you just not like me? Or am I not likable? Like the sort of paranoia surrounding that notion of status and money and social interactions. And so I just feel like Shane, after the fact, is so brazen as to be like, I'm still going to go into the world. I
Mhm.
didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Like he walked into a knife, he broke
Right.
into my room, he shit in my suitcase. I have a right to defend myself. Uh, but also is like living with that paranoia all the way up. That like every room he goes into where people are like, is him being like, are you talking about me?
Yeah.
It's just like losing his mind
That would be
around
that
thinking
would,
everyone's talking about him, but also like kind of wants everyone to talk about him. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
also is such an egomaniac as to want that thing. And I don't know if Rachel is like ride or die for that, or they get back home and she's like, I can't do this. Like I also think there's a version where Shane shows up at another resort with like his new girlfriend who's also named Rachel.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah.
just swapped out one person for another. Um, I, like I don't know what darkness. None of it's good. There's no version where I'm like, I think they go to couples therapy and
And it
he
all works
grows
out. Yeah.
emotionally. Yeah, and
Yeah.
she sees her own neediness and choices as well. Like I don't. That's not the path that I see.
No, and the biggest nightmare would be they get together, they have a kid, and then there's a
Oh,
there's a soul that he ruins.
yeah, and then there's a nanny, like an au
Yeah.
pair. You know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah.
not raising that kid. Like
No.
there's
No.
just so many. None of it. None of
No.
it's good. None of it's good.
Well, thank you so much for the time today.
Of
Again,
course, no problem.
congratulations on such a fantastic performance and a friend of the family. And best of
Thank you.
luck to you and Happy New Year.
Hey, same. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.